Welcome to 5 Minutes with Rob. It's a strange thing, but most of us go through adult life thinking less and less about the great questions, the big questions. It's hard to say exactly why that is, although one could hazard a very good guess that it's to do with the pressures of adult life, work, relationships, family, children, health, and so on. And these things just squeeze out the sort of leisured time that we had when we were younger to consider perhaps more interesting philosophical questions, the wondering questions we might have asked as a young person. Well, I'd like to invite you to take just 5 minutes out of your time from the humdrum and from the relentless demands of life to think, to wonder, to allow the questions and maybe some new ones in another video later to rise again to the surface. I'm going to imagine these questions asked over the period of a day. And we're going to start with a bleary, rude Monday morning awakening, and then in other videos we'll go through to last thing at night. Here's my first question. It sounds silly, and yet this question has exercised some of the greatest thinkers. The question is this: why should there be anything at all? Your alarm clock buzzes and you check to see exactly what time it is. It feels like stupidly early AM. You look at your clock and it is stupidly early AM. You sit yourself upright on the bed, kind of like a little compromise, pretending to yourself that you haven't really got up, but you have really. And you start to fiddle around looking for matching socks and the half light. If you're anything like me, you get it wrong. Thoughts of the encroaching day ahead fill your mind. Meetings, tasks to finish, co-workers, or maybe for you it's looking after the children, or it's the ongoing search for work. And a strange thought crosses your mind. The sort of thought you might have had, I don't know, when you had a drink too many and you were just getting a little bit overly thoughtful. It's kind of like you're perceiving things at a slightly deeper level than you would normally do. You have this useless, impractical, and yet joyful insight beyond the pedestrian run of the mill. You rub your feet on the floor. Your hands feel around for clothes. You later wash the contours of your face and briefly stare out of the window, contemplating the clouds as they scud past, and the leaves they blow along outside on the pavement below. Trees, floors, clothes, things, yourself. All things, matter, stuff. And the sheer reality of stuff hits you in a new way. All these things exist. They have existence. And yet that's something that we just take for granted all the time. It's a silly little fact that's abused and disregarded. You look at your face in the mirror and you watch your pupils dilate a little. And the question strikes you hard. Why should anything bother existing at all? Well, maybe a strange thought for a chilly Monday morning. But when we look at the parts of the universe, it really doesn't seem like something that just had to be there. I mean, why would any of it have to exist? But even more than that, even if it wasn't this universe, this world, why would there have to be anything at all? We can imagine, well, sort of, two possibilities. There could have been something or nothing. Very difficult to imagine somewhere halfway between those two options. And yet, here it all is. Something. You might just turn to me and say, well, Rob, that's, wonderful for you. Great idea. However, You know, maybe it just is. But what universe is just here, it just is a brute fact. And to ask questions about, well, how come, really is just to ask a meaningless question. It's just there, and it's really tantamount to typical human arrogance to think that it must be there for some reason. Maybe if we were university educated, we might describe it as being anthropocentric. Maybe. But the philosopher Richard Taylor asks us to imagine we're walking through a woodland and suddenly we spot this translucent ball on the ground. You turn to your friend and you ask, "Why do you think that's there?" And she answers, "Well, it just is. Don't be so anthropocentric." Or you might double take. "Is she serious?" "Okay," says Taylor. "Well, now suppose the ball is bigger. It's the size of you. Has the question changed?" No, of course not. You still wonder why this ball is there. Well, Richard Taylor asks us then to imagine the ball's bigger still. It's the size of the woodland now. Is the question any less meaningful? Why is this ball here? Well, imagine next Taylor asks us to imagine the ball is the size of the planet Earth. And you can see where he's going now. Then it's the size of the solar system. And then finally it's just smaller than the size of the known universe. Is the question any less meaningful just because it's bigger? No. It's the same question, in essence, as the ball in the woodland. Well, extend it, Taylor asks us, to the actual size of the universe. Does the question vanish? I don't think it does. Maybe you disagree. I don't know. But it's an interesting and strange thought for a Monday morning. Wouldn't you agree?